He pushed his mop across the marble floor, the same way he did every night. The hallways of Westbrook Academy were quiet after 9, nothing but the hum of air conditioning and the squeak of his worn-out shoes. He liked it this way. No students rushing past him like he was invisible. No teachers giving him that polite smile that never reached their eyes. Just him and the silence. His name badge said custodial staff, but everyone just called him the night janitor. He had been working here for 3 years, cleaning up after kids whose parents paid more for 1 semester than he made in 2 years. He never complained. This job let him be home when his son woke up for school. It let him make breakfast, pack lunches, and walk the boy to the bus stop. For a single father, that was worth more than any fancy title. His son was 8 years old, a bright kid with a gap-toothed smile and a curiosity that never stopped. The boy didn't know that his father had once been accepted to one of the best music schools in the country. He didn't know that before the medical bills, before the funeral, before everything fell apart, his father had dreams that stretched far beyond mop buckets and floor wax. That was another life. A life that ended the day his wife got sick. He finished the East Wing and wheeled his cart toward the music building. This was always his last stop, and if he was being honest, his favorite. The music wing had high ceilings and big windows that let in the moonlight. It smelled like polished wood and old books. And at the end of the hallway, behind 2 heavy oak doors, was the recital hall. He pushed open the doors and stopped. Someone was playing the piano. It wasn't unusual for students to practice late, but most of them were gone by 7. He checked his watch. It was almost 10. He should have told whoever it was that the building was closing. That was the rule. But something about the music made him pause. It was messy. The notes stumbled over each other, starting and stopping like a car that wouldn't turn over. Whoever was playing kept hitting the same wrong chord over and over, growing more frustrated each time. He could hear it in the way their fingers slammed the keys harder with every mistake. He stepped inside quietly and looked toward the stage. A girl sat at the grand piano. She looked about 12, maybe 13. She had long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and wore the school uniform, though her blazer was tossed on the bench beside her. Her eyes were closed, and he realized after a moment they weren't just closed. She was blind. He had seen her before, always with a teacher's aide or waiting in the front office for her parents. She was one of the scholarship kids, he remembered. The school had a program for students with disabilities, something they liked to mention in their brochures. He never knew her name, but he recognized her face. Right now, that face was twisted with frustration. She played the passage again, and again she hit the wrong note. This time, she slammed both hands on the keys and let out a sound that was halfway between a groan and a cry. He should have left. That was what the rules said. Staff were not supposed to interact with students outside of official duties. If anyone found out he was alone in a room with a student at 10 o'clock at night, he could lose his job. And he could not afford to lose this job. But the sound she made, that small cry of defeat, it hit something deep in his chest. He knew that sound. He had made it himself, years ago, sitting at a piano that no longer belonged to him. Before he could stop himself, he spoke. "You're close." The girl's head snapped up. Her hands flew off the keys like they were on fire. "Who's there?" He stepped forward slowly, his shoes loud on the wooden floor so she could track where he was. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I work here." "Night shift? The janitor?" She didn't say it with disgust, just surprise. "That's right." She relaxed a little, though her hands stayed in her lap, tense. "I thought everyone was gone. Most people are. I'm usually the last one out." He paused, not sure why he was still talking. "That piece you were playing. Chopin, right?" Now it was her turn to be surprised. "You know Chopin?" He almost laughed. He knew Chopin the way some people knew their own heartbeat. But he just said, "A little." The girl tilted her head, like she was trying to figure him out by sound alone. "I keep messing up the same part. The left hand, it's supposed to do this run, but I can't get my fingers to move fast enough." He knew exactly what part she meant. It was tricky, a quick descent that required your left hand to work independently while your right hand held the melody. Most beginners tried to make both hands do the same thing, and that was where they went wrong. "Your left hand," he said slowly, "it wants to lead when it should follow." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He shouldn't do this. Every smart part of his brain was screaming at him to walk away, to finish mopping, to go home to his son. But his feet carried him to the piano anyway. He stood beside the bench, not too close, keeping a respectful distance. "Can I show you?" She hesitated. Then she slid over on the bench, making room. He sat down. The piano was a Steinway, probably worth more than his apartment. He hadn't touched a real piano in 7 years. When his wife died and the bills piled up, he sold his own. A beaten-up upright that had been his grandmother's. It nearly killed him to let it go. But his son needed to eat more than he needed to play music. His fingers hovered over the keys. They were trembling. "Are you okay?" The girl asked. "Yeah." He took a breath. "It's just been a while." He played the passage. Not perfectly. His fingers were rusty and stiff, but well enough. He played it slow first, showing her how the left hand needed to stay soft, almost lazy, while the right hand did the heavy lifting. Then he played it at full speed, the notes tumbling out like water over rocks. When he stopped, the silence was thick. "Wow," the girl whispered. "You're not just a janitor, are you?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he stood up from the bench. "Try it again. But this time, pretend your left hand is asleep. Let it follow. Don't force it." She turned back to the piano. She played the passage. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Much better. When she finished, a smile broke across her face. The kind of smile that made all the frustration from before disappear. "I did it," she said. "You did." She turned toward him, and even though her eyes couldn't see him, it felt like she was looking right through him. "Will you be here tomorrow night?" He should have said no. He should have told her that this was a one-time thing, that he couldn't risk his job, that he was nobody. Just the man who mopped the floors. But looking at her smile, hearing the echo of those notes still hanging in the air, he couldn't make himself say it. "I'll be here," he said. He picked up his mop and walked back to his cart. As he pushed through the doors, he heard her start playing again. This time, she didn't stop at the hard part. She played right through it, her left hand soft and obedient, her right hand singing. He stood in the hallway and listened until she finished. Then he smiled for the first time in a long while and went back to work. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that someone else had been listening too. A woman in an expensive coat had been standing in the shadows near the back entrance, watching the whole thing. She had come to the school for a meeting about the spring gala and had gotten lost on her way out. But when she heard the piano, she followed the sound. She watched the janitor teach the blind girl. She watched him play with hands that clearly knew their way around a keyboard. She watched the girl's face light up when she finally got it right. And when the janitor walked out, she stayed in the shadows, tears running down her cheeks, her heart pounding with a feeling she hadn't felt since her own daughter died. She would come back tomorrow night. And the night after that. She needed to know more about this man who mopped floors and played Chopin like he had been born for it. She needed to understand why watching him felt like watching a miracle. He told himself it would only be one more time. Just one more night to help the girl with that tricky passage, and then he would go back to being invisible. That was the plan. But plans have a way of falling apart. The next night, she was waiting for him. He could see her through the glass doors of the recital hall, sitting at the piano bench with her hands folded in her lap. She wasn't playing. She was just sitting there, her head tilted slightly, like she was listening for footsteps. When he pushed the door open, she smiled. "I knew you'd come." "How?" he asked. "I heard your cart squeaking in the hallway. You have a wheel that needs oil." He laughed. It caught him off guard, that laugh. He couldn't remember the last time he had laughed at work. "I'll fix that tomorrow." "Don't," she said. "I like knowing when you're coming." That night, he taught her how to feel the music instead of just playing it. He explained that every piece told a story, and her job was to figure out what that story was. The Chopin piece she was working on, he told her, was about longing, about wanting something you couldn't have. She needed to play it like she understood that feeling. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I know what that feels like." He didn't ask her to explain. Some things you just understood without words. By the end of the night, she was playing the piece better than students twice her age. Her fingers moved with a confidence that hadn't been there before. When she finished, she turned to him with that same bright smile. "Same time Thursday?" she asked. He should have said no, but he nodded and said, "Same time Thursday." And that was how it started, every Tuesday and Thursday night. After he finished cleaning the science wing, and before he started on the gymnasium, he would stop by the recital hall. She was always there, waiting. Her parents worked late, she explained. Her father drove a delivery truck, and her mother worked the night shift at a hospital. A tutor stayed with her until 8, but after that, she was alone until her father picked her up around 10:30. "Isn't that lonely?" he asked once. She shrugged. "It used to be. Not anymore." He taught her the way his grandmother had taught him, back when he was a skinny kid in a tiny apartment with a piano that was always out of tune. His grandmother couldn't read sheet music. She had learned to play in a church down south where they didn't have hymnals and everyone played by ear. She taught him that music wasn't about getting every note perfect. It was about making people feel something. "Close your eyes," his grandmother used to say, even though his eyes worked fine. "Now play it like you're telling me a secret." He said the same thing to the girl now, and she understood. She understood in a way that most people never did. The girl learned fast, faster than anyone he had ever seen. Within a few weeks, she was playing pieces that took sighted students months to master. Her blindness, he realized, wasn't holding her back. In some ways, it was pushing her forward. She didn't get distracted by sheet music or by watching her own hands. She just listened. She felt the keys under her fingers and trusted them to take her where she needed to go. "You're a natural," he told her one night. She shook her head. "I just have a good teacher." Those words hit him harder than he expected. He hadn't thought of himself as a teacher in a long time. He hadn't thought of himself as much of anything, really. Just a man trying to keep his head above water, trying to give his son a decent life. But when she called him a teacher, something inside him woke up. Something that had been sleeping for 7 years. He started looking forward to those nights. For 2 hours, twice a week, he wasn't just the janitor. He was someone who mattered. Someone who had something to offer, but he never told anyone. Not his coworkers, not his neighbors, not even his own son. He was terrified of what would happen if the school found out. The rules were clear. Staff were not supposed to have private contact with students. It didn't matter that he was helping her. It didn't matter that her parents had never complained. If the administration learned that the night janitor was giving secret piano lessons to a 12-year-old girl, they would fire him on the spot. And then what? He had no savings, No backup plan. His son depended on him for everything. He couldn't afford to take that risk, so he kept it a secret. He made sure no one saw them together. He always checked the hallways before entering the recital hall. He never stayed past 10:15, giving himself time to disappear before her father arrived. It was exhausting, living with that fear. But every time he heard her play, every time he saw that smile break across her face when she nailed a difficult passage, he knew it was worth it. What he didn't know was that his secret wasn't as secret as he thought. The woman in the expensive coat had come back. Her name didn't matter. Not yet. What mattered was who she was. She was married to one of the richest men in the city, a man whose family had founded Westbrook Academy 3 generations ago. Her husband's name was on the building. His portrait hung in the main hall. He sat on the board of directors and wrote checks that kept the school running. But she wasn't here because of her husband. She was here because of what she had seen that first night, and she couldn't get it out of her head. She had lost a daughter 5 years ago. The girl had been 11, bright and full of life, with a talent for piano that amazed everyone who heard her play. When she got sick, the music stopped. When she died, everything stopped. The woman had spent the last 5 years feeling like a ghost in her own life, going through the motions, but never really being present. Then she heard the janitor play. Something about it broke through the fog. The way he touched the keys, so gentle and sure. The way he talked to the blind girl, like she was the most important person in the world. The way the girl's face lit up when she finally understood what he was teaching her. Reminded her of her daughter. It reminded her of a time when music filled her house and everything felt possible. So she came back. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she parked her car in the back lot and slipped into the recital hall through the side door. She sat in the last row of seats, hidden in the shadows where the stage lights didn't reach. And she watched. She watched the janitor teach with patience. She had never seen many of the expensive instructors her daughter had worked with. She watched the blind girl bloom under his guidance, growing more confident with every lesson. She watched 2 people who had every reason to give up on life find something beautiful together. Some nights she cried. She didn't know why exactly. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was both. She knew she should say something. She should introduce herself, tell the janitor that his secret was safe, maybe even offer to help. But she was afraid. Afraid that if she stepped into their world, she would ruin it. Afraid that her husband would find out and turn it into something official, something cold and corporate. So she stayed in the shadows. Week after week, she watched and listened and felt something inside her slowly coming back to life. But secrets have a way of coming out. And this one was about to explode in ways none of them could have predicted. One Thursday night, as the janitor was packing up his cart and the girl was putting on her coat, the woman made a decision. She had been hiding long enough. It was time to step into the light. She stood up from her seat in the back row. Her heels clicked on the wooden floor, loud in the empty hall. The janitor froze. The girl turned her head toward the sound. "Please," the woman said, her voice shaking. "Don't be afraid. I just want to talk." The janitor looked at her, and in his eyes she saw pure terror. He thought this was the end. He thought he was about to lose everything. He had no idea that this woman wasn't here to destroy his life. She was here to change it forever. The janitor's heart dropped to his stomach. He recognized her immediately. Everyone who worked at Westbrook Academy knew that face. Her portrait hung in the main lobby right next to her husband's. She was the wife of the man who owned this school, the man who signed his paychecks, the man who could end his career with a single phone call. This was it. This was the moment he had been dreading for weeks. He stepped in front of the blind girl without thinking. like he could somehow protect her from what was coming. His mind raced through excuses, explanations, anything that might save him. But nothing came. There was no way to explain this that wouldn't get him fired. "Please," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know I broke the rules. I know I shouldn't have done this. But please don't punish her. She didn't do anything wrong. This was all my idea." The woman stopped walking. She was close enough now that he could see her face clearly in the dim light. She wasn't angry. That was the first thing he noticed. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying. Her hands were clasped in front of her, trembling slightly. "I'm not here to punish anyone," she said softly. He didn't believe her. Why would he? Rich people always said things like that right before they destroyed you. He had learned that lesson the hard way when his wife got sick and the insurance company used kind words while denying every claim. "Then why are you here?" he asked. The woman took a deep breath. She looked past him at the blind girl, who was standing very still with her coat half on, her head tilted like she was trying to make sense of what was happening. "I've been watching you," the woman said. "Both of you. For weeks now." The janitor felt his blood run cold. "Watching us?" "I came here one night for a meeting about the spring gala. I got lost on my way out and heard piano music. I followed it." She paused, her voice catching. "What I saw that night, the way you taught her, the way she played, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it." He didn't know what to say. This wasn't what he expected. He had expected threats, maybe security guards, definitely a pink slip. He hadn't expected a rich woman with tears in her eyes telling him she had been spying on his lessons. The blind girl spoke up. Her voice was calm, much calmer than his. "You've been here every Tuesday and Thursday?" The woman nodded, then remembered the girl couldn't see her. "Yes, every lesson. I sat in the back row. I thought I heard someone," the girl said. "Breathing. Sometimes I smelled perfume. I thought I was imagining it." The woman let out a small laugh, though it sounded more like a sob. "You weren't imagining it. I'm sorry, I didn't say anything sooner. I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" the janitor asked. The woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to the edge of the stage and sat down on the steps, her expensive coat spreading out on the dusty wood. She suddenly looked very tired, like she had been carrying something heavy for a long time. "I had a daughter," she said. "She died 5 years ago. She was 11. The janitor felt the tension in his shoulders ease just a little. He understood loss. He understood how it could hollow you out and leave you walking through life like a shadow. "She played piano," the woman continued. "She was good, really good. We had instructors come to the house 3 times a week. We bought her a grand piano that cost more than most people's cars. We did everything we could to support her talent." She looked down at her hands. "But none of those instructors taught her the way you teach this girl. None of them understood that music is about more than hitting the right notes." The janitor didn't know what to say. He just stood there, listening. "When my daughter got sick, she stopped playing. She said the music didn't sound right anymore. She said it felt empty." The woman's voice broke. "I didn't understand what she meant until I watched you. You taught this girl to feel the music, to play from her heart. That's what my daughter was missing. That's what all those expensive instructors never gave her." The blind girl had been listening quietly. Now she reached out her hand, searching for the janitor's arm. When she found it, she held on. "I'm sorry about your daughter," the girl said simply. The woman looked up at her. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she was smiling. "Thank you." For a moment, no one spoke. The recital hall was silent, except for the hum of the heating system and the distant sound of traffic outside. The janitor felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting to see which way he would fall. Finally, the woman stood up. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, took a breath, and looked directly at him. "I didn't come here to get you in trouble," she said. "I came here to ask you something." "Ask me what?" "The spring gala is in 2 months. Every year, we invite students to perform for the donors. It's the biggest event of the year. The performances are supposed to showcase the best talent the school has to offer." She paused. "This girl isn't on the program." "She's never been on the program. The students who perform have private coaches, special training, connections. Her family can't afford any of that." The janitor nodded slowly. He knew how these things worked. Talent didn't matter if he didn't have money or connections. The same kids got picked every year because their parents wrote big checks. "I want her to perform at the gala," the woman said. "And I want you to prepare her." He stared at her. He must have heard wrong. "You want me to coach her? For the gala?" "Yes, I'm a janitor." "I know what your job title is," the woman said. "But I also know what I've seen. You're not just a janitor. You're a teacher. Maybe the best teacher this school has ever had, and they don't even know it." He shook his head. "You don't understand. If your husband finds out about this, if the administration finds out, I'll be fired. I can't afford to lose this job. I have a son." "I know," the woman said. "I know the risks. That's why I'm going to protect you." "How?" "I'm going to make this official. I'll talk to my husband, talk to the headmaster. I'll tell them I discovered a talented student who needs coaching and that I've found someone to do it. I won't mention that you've already been teaching her. As far as anyone will know, this is all starting now." The janitor felt dizzy. This was too much, too fast. An hour ago, he was mopping floors and teaching a girl in secret. Now a billionaire's wife was offering to change his life. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you do this for us?" The woman looked at the blind girl, then back at him. "Because watching you two gave me something I haven't felt in 5 years. Hope." She smiled, though her eyes were still wet. "And because my daughter would have loved this girl. She would have wanted me to help her." The blind girl squeezed the janitor's arm. He looked down at her. She was smiling too, that same bright smile that had made him break all his rules in the first place. "What do you think?" he asked her quietly. "I think," she said, "that I want to play at that gala. And I think you're the only person who can help me get there." He took a deep breath. His whole life, he had played it safe. He had given up his dreams to take care of his family. He had hidden his talents because showing them felt too dangerous. He had spent years being invisible because invisible was safe. But safe hadn't made him happy. Safe had just made him tired. Maybe it was time to take a chance. He looked at the woman. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it." The woman's face broke into a real smile, the first one he had seen from her. "Thank you," she said. "You won't regret this." He hoped she was right. But deep down, he knew that the hard part was just beginning. Convincing her husband, facing the headmaster, preparing a blind girl to perform in front of the richest people in the city. It sounded impossible. But then again, so did a janitor teaching piano to a blind girl in an empty recital hall at 10 o'clock at night. And look how that turned out. He picked up his mop and headed for the door. Before he left, he turned back one last time. "Thursday," he said to the girl. "We start real practice on Thursday." She grinned. "I'll be ready." And for the first time in years, he believed that something good might actually be coming his way. The woman kept her word. The very next morning, she walked into her husband's office at home and told him everything. Well, almost everything. She left out the part about watching the janitor teach for weeks. She made it sound like she had just discovered them, like it was all fresh and new. Her husband listened without interrupting. He was a tall man with silver hair and a kind of face that rarely showed emotion. He had built his family's fortune into something even bigger, and he didn't do that by being sentimental. When she finished talking, he set down his coffee cup and looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Let me make sure I understand," he said slowly. "You want a janitor to coach a blind scholarship student for the spring gala. The same gala where we bring in donors who expect to see the best of the best. The same gala that raises half our operating budget for the year." "Yes," she said. "And you don't see any problem with this?" "I see plenty of problems. I just think this is worth doing anyway." He shook his head. "This is a risk. A huge risk. What if the girl freezes on stage? What if she makes mistakes? What if the donors think we've lost our standards?" He stood up and walked to the window. "This school has a reputation. My family built that reputation over 3 generations. I'm not going to let a janitor and a blind girl put it in danger." She felt her temper rise, but she kept her voice calm. She had learned long ago that yelling at her husband never worked. "Our daughter would have been 13 this year," she said quietly. He went still. He didn't turn around. She would have been getting ready for her own gala performance. She would have been nervous and excited and practicing every day. The woman's voice cracked. "I know you don't like to talk about her. I know it hurts. But I watched that janitor teach that girl, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt something other than grief. I felt hope." Her husband was quiet for a long time. When he finally turned around, his eyes were wet. He rarely cried, maybe twice in their entire marriage. "This really matters to you," he said. "More than anything has in a long time." He sighed. "I'll talk to the headmaster, but I'm not making any promises. And if this goes wrong, if the donors complain, if the board asks questions, I need you to understand that I might not be able to protect you." "Or him. I understand," she said. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. And that was enough to move forward. The meeting with the headmaster was even harder. He was a nervous man who cared more about rules than people. When the woman and her husband sat across from his desk and explained the situation, he turned pale. "A custodial staff member?" he said, like the words tasted bad. "Teaching students?" "Coaching 1 student," the woman corrected. "For 1 performance. But he has no credentials. No teaching certificate. No background in music education." The headmaster shuffled through papers on his desk like he was looking for a rule that would save him. "This is highly irregular. The liability alone, if something goes wrong, if the parents complain." "The parents won't complain," the woman said. "I've already spoken to them. They're thrilled. Their daughter has been coming home happier than she's been in years. They couldn't afford private lessons before. Now someone is offering to help their child for free, and you want to tell them no?" The headmaster opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at her husband for help, but her husband just sat there with his arms crossed, letting his wife do the talking. "I'll need documentation," the headmaster finally said. "Proof that this man actually knows what he's doing. Some kind of credentials, anything." That night, the woman called the janitor. She explained what she needed, and there was a long silence on the other end. "I don't have much," he said. "I never finished my degree. I never got certified. Do you have anything? Anything at all that shows you studied music?" Another long pause. "There might be something. Hold on." She heard him moving around, opening drawers, shuffling through papers. When he came back on the line, his voice sounded strange, like he was holding something he hadn't touched in years. "I have an acceptance letter," he said. "From Juilliard. Full scholarship. It's dated 15 years ago." The woman felt her breath catch. Juilliard? You were accepted to Juilliard? I never went. My mother got sick. I had to stay home and take care of her. He paused. By the time she passed, the scholarship was gone. And then life just kept happening. I met my wife, had my son. She got sick too. His voice trailed off. The woman closed her eyes. This man had given up everything. His dreams, his talent, his future. And now he was working nights as a janitor, teaching a blind girl in secret because it was the only way he could still touch the music he loved. Bring the letter tomorrow, she said. It might be enough. It was enough. Barely. The headmaster grumbled and complained, but a Juilliard acceptance letter was hard to argue with. He agreed to let the janitor coach the girl officially, with conditions. There had to be a chaperone present at every lesson. The girl's parents had to sign consent forms. The janitor had to pass a background check. And if anything goes wrong, the headmaster said, pointing a finger at the woman, this is on you. She nodded. She could live with that dot, but passing the headmaster's tests was only half the battle. The real challenge was preparing the girl for the biggest performance of her life. They had 8 weeks. 8 weeks to get her ready to play in front of 300 donors who expected perfection. 8 weeks to prove that a janitor could teach and a blind girl could perform at the highest level. The practices were brutal. The janitor pushed her harder than he ever had before. He made her play the same passage 50 times in a row until her fingers ached. He made her start over whenever she lost focus. He was patient, always patient, but he was also demanding. You can't just be good, he told her. Good won't be enough. They're going to walk into that room expecting you to fail. They're going to look at you and see a blind girl who doesn't belong. You have to be so good that they forget everything except the music. Some nights, she cried. Some nights, she wanted to quit. Some nights, she told him she wasn't good enough, that this was a mistake, that she was going to embarrass everyone. He never let her give up. You're better than you know, he told her every time. You just have to trust yourself. Meanwhile, the janitor was fighting his own battle. Word had gotten around the school about what was happening. Some of the other staff thought it was inspiring, but others, especially some of the music teachers, thought it was ridiculous. They whispered behind his back. They made comments about janitors who didn't know their place. One teacher even filed a complaint with the headmaster, arguing that an unqualified person was being allowed to do a professional's job. The janitor tried to ignore it, but it wore him down. Some nights, after practice was over and the girl had gone home, he sat alone in the recital hall and wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. It was his son who pulled him through. The boy had figured out what his father was doing. He found the old Juilliard letter in a drawer and asked about it. The janitor told him the truth, all of it, for the first time. Why didn't you ever tell me you could play piano? The boy asked. I guess I didn't think it mattered anymore. His son looked at him with those serious eyes that were so much like his mother's. It matters. Dad, it matters a lot. That night, the boy said something the janitor would never forget. You always tell me to be brave, even when I'm scared. Why don't you do it too? The janitor pulled his son into a hug and held him tight. The boy was right. He had spent so many years being afraid. Afraid of failing, afraid of hoping, afraid of wanting things he thought he couldn't have. But his son believed in him. The blind girl believed in him. Even the rich woman believed in him. Maybe it was time he started believing in himself. 6 weeks left until the gala. 6 weeks to prove that dreams don't die. They just wait for the right moment to wake up again. He was ready. The night of the gala arrived faster than anyone expected. The recital hall had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. White flowers lined the stage. 300 chairs were arranged in perfect rows, and every single one was filled with someone important. Business leaders, politicians, old money families, tech founders. These were the people who kept Westbrook Academy running, and they had come expecting a show. The janitor stood backstage, wearing a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit. His hands were sweating. His heart was pounding so hard, he could feel it in his throat. He had performed in front of crowds before, back when he was young and still chasing his dreams. But tonight wasn't about him. Tonight was about the girl, and that made it 1,000 times more terrifying. She was sitting on a folding chair nearby, her white cane leaning against the wall. She wore a simple blue dress that her mother had sewn by hand. Her hair was pulled back with a ribbon. She looked calm, but he knew better. He could see the way her fingers trembled in her lap. He could hear the quick, shallow sound of her breathing. The program had been running for over an hour. Student after student had taken the stage, playing pieces that were technically perfect, but somehow forgettable. The donors clapped politely after each one, already checking their watches, already thinking about the cocktails waiting in the next room. The girl was listed last. The final performance of the night. The headmaster had tried to bury her at the end, hoping people would leave early and miss her entirely. But the woman had insisted. She wanted the girl to have the spotlight, even if it meant more pressure. A stagehand appeared at the door. 5 minutes, he said. The janitor knelt down in front of the girl. He took her hands in his. They were cold as ice. "Hey," he said softly. "Look at me." She turned her face toward his voice. Her eyes, as always, stared at nothing. But somehow it still felt like she was looking right at him. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. What if I mess up? What if I forget the notes? What if everyone laughs?" He squeezed her hands. "Listen to me. When you walk out there, you're going to hear a lot of things. You're going to hear people whispering. You're going to hear chairs creaking. You're going to feel all those eyes on you, even if you can't see them. And your brain is going to tell you that you don't belong there." She nodded, her lip trembling. "But here's what I need you to do. When you sit down at that piano, I want you to forget all of it. Forget the donors. Forget the headmaster. Forget everyone who ever doubted you. There's no audience out there. There's no gala. There's just you and the music." He paused. "Play it the way you played it for me that first night, when you didn't know anyone was listening. That's when you were the most honest. That's when you were the best." She took a shaky breath. "Will you be watching?" "I'll be right here in the wings. I'm not going anywhere." She nodded. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and hugged him. It was quick and fierce, and when she pulled back, there were tears on her cheeks. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Before he could respond, the stagehand was back. "It's time." The girl stood up. She grabbed her cane, and with her head held high, she walked toward the stage. The auditorium went quiet when she appeared. 300 people watched as a blind girl in a homemade dress made her way across the stage. Some of them exchanged glances. Some of them frowned. A few whispered to each other, and the janitor could guess what they were saying. What is this? Who let her perform? Is this some kind of joke? The girl reached the piano. She folded her cane and set it on the floor beside the bench. She sat down, adjusted her position, and placed her fingers on the keys. Silence. For a moment, she didn't move. The janitor's heart nearly stopped. Was she freezing? Was she forgetting? Had all those weeks of practice disappeared in an instant? Then she began to play. She had chosen Chopin's Ballade, No. 1 in G minor. It was one of the most difficult pieces in the piano repertoire. 12 minutes of technical brilliance and emotional depth. Professional pianists spent years mastering it. Music teachers said it was too hard for someone her age. She played it like she had been born for it. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, like a question being asked. Then the melody began to build, growing stronger and more confident with each measure. Her left hand moved across the keys with perfect control, soft and obedient, just like he had taught her. Her right hand sang out the melody, each note ringing clear and true, that the donors stopped whispering. The headmaster stopped fidgeting. Even the waiters in the back of the room stopped moving and turned to watch. She played with her eyes closed, her face lifted slightly, like she was listening to something only she could hear. She swayed with the music, letting it move through her body. When the piece grew loud and fierce, her whole frame seemed to vibrate with the force of it. When it grew soft and tender, she leaned into the piano like she was sharing a secret. The janitor watched from the wings, tears streaming down his face. He didn't bother to wipe them away. He had never heard her play like this. This was beyond anything they had practiced. This was something else entirely. This was a girl pouring her whole soul onto those keys, holding nothing back, afraid of nothing. The final section of the piece was the hardest. A cascade of notes that climbed higher and higher, building to a climax that demanded everything a pianist had to give. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, never missing a single note. And then, with one final thundering chord, it was over. Silence. For 3 heartbeats. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then the room exploded. People leaped to their feet. They clapped so hard, the chandeliers shook. They cheered. They shouted. Some of them were crying. The applause went on, wave after wave, louder than anything the janitor had ever heard. But the girl didn't seem to notice. She turned her head toward the wings, toward the spot where she knew he was standing. "Did I do okay?" she asked softly. He walked onto the stage. He didn't care about the rules anymore. He didn't care who was watching. He took her hand and helped her stand. "You did more than okay," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You reminded everyone in this room what music is supposed to feel like." The applause grew even louder. People were on their feet, calling for an encore, wiping tears from their eyes. The headmaster sat frozen in his chair, his mouth hanging open. The wealthy woman was sobbing into her husband's shoulder. And for the first time in years, he was holding her tight and crying too. Later that night, after the donors had gone home and the caterers had packed up, the janitor sat alone in the empty recital hall. The chairs were still arranged in rows. The flowers were starting to wilt, but the echo of that music still hung in the air. The wealthy woman found him there. She sat down beside him without saying a word. "What happens now?" he asked. She smiled. "Now everything changes." And it did. The girl received a full scholarship to study music, funded personally by the woman and her husband. She would go on to attend one of the best conservatories in the country, and years later, she would perform on stages around the world. In every interview, she would credit the janitor who taught her that music wasn't about seeing the notes. It was about feeling them. The janitor was offered a real teaching position at the academy. He never mopped another floor. He started a program for students who couldn't afford private lessons, teaching them the way his grandmother had taught him. Dozens of kids who never thought they had a chance discovered that they had talent after all. The woman and the janitor became unlikely friends. She told him about her daughter, showed him old videos of the girl playing. He understood her grief in a way few others could. Together, they built something that honored both the daughter who was lost and the students who were found. And every year, at the spring gala, the final performance was given by a student from the janitor's program. Kids nobody expected anything from playing music that made 300 important people rise to their feet. The recital hall still bore the name of the founder's family. But now it held something more. It held proof that talent doesn't come with a price tag, that kindness can change a life, And that sometimes the people who clean up after us are the ones who have the most to teach. The janitor never forgot where he came from. But for the first time in years, he finally knew where he was going. And that made all the difference.